Hi, I'm Danielle, 28 years old, born and raised right here in Austin, Texas. I'm a graphic designer by trade, a devoted dog mom, and until very recently, I genuinely believed I had a firm grasp on what true love meant. But what unfolded after I walked down the aisle after I said, I do, well, that experience has fundamentally reshaped every fiber of my being. You see, something incredible happened just before my grandmother, Loretta, passed away. She gave me a gift, something truly astonishing. 3 apartments, all in her name, right here in the heart of Austin. And I kept it a secret. Not because I harbored any deep-seated distrust for the man I was about to marry, not initially, but because Grandma Loretta, a woman of immense wisdom and quiet strength, had always instilled a certain philosophy in me. She taught me, Danielle, don't show all your cards if you're not sure of the poker table. And let me tell you, from the depths of my soul, thank God I listened to her. Thank God I never uttered a single word about those properties. Because what happened next? What unraveled in the months following my wedding? No prenuptial agreement, no matter how ironclad, could have ever prepared me for the sheer audacity, the intricate deception, and the profound betrayal that was about to hit me square in the face. It was a storm I never saw coming, a lesson I learned the hardest way possible. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Have you ever held onto a secret, a quiet piece of information that against all odds ended up being your ultimate saving grace? Something you tucked away, not out of malice, but out of an instinct you couldn't quite name at the time? If you have, I'd love to hear about it. Share your stories down in the comments below. Because sometimes those hidden things are the very lifelines we need. And if betrayal, if the exhilarating rush of revenge, and the journey to a truly magnificent glow-up are the kinds of stories that captivate you, then you are definitely in the right place. Go ahead, hit that like button, and subscribe to my channel. Because this one, my friends, this one gets wicked. It gets undeniably, breathtakingly wicked. You won't want to miss a single, dramatic moment. It all started with a whirlwind, a beautiful, exhilarating blur that felt like a movie montage. His name was Jason, and he came crashing into my life like a perfectly scripted romantic lead. He was in his early 30s, handsome in that effortlessly charming way, and carried himself with an air of self-made confidence. He told me he was an entrepreneur, always talking about big deals and even bigger dreams. And for a while, I believed him. I really, truly did. From the moment we met, he swept me off my feet. Our early dates were straight out of a fairy tale. Romantic dinners under the Austin stars, impulsive weekend trips, late-night conversations where he seemed to hang on my every word. He was intense, passionate, and he made me feel like the most cherished person on earth. The kind of love that feels so right, so destined, that you completely surrender to it. He filled my days with grand gestures and even grander promises. I want to take care of you, Danielle, he'd say, his eyes shining. Forever. You won't have to worry about a thing. He spoke of our future with such conviction, paint a vivid picture of a life together where all my dreams would come true. It was intoxicating. Who wouldn't want to believe in a love like that? He was everything I thought I wanted in a partner, driven, affectionate, and seemingly devoted to me. The proposal itself was something out of a dream. He took me to Napa, to a beautiful vineyard overlooking rolling hills bathed in golden sunlight. He got down on one knee, a velvet box in his hand, and spoke words that melted my heart. It was perfect. I said yes without a moment's hesitation, overjoyed and convinced I had found my soulmate. We were going to build an incredible life together, a partnership based on love and mutual respect. Or so I thought. Looking back now, with the painful clarity of hindsight, I can pinpoint the moments, the tiny, almost imperceptible flickers of warning that I, in my love-struck blindness, chose to ignore. They were like subtle glitches in an otherwise perfect film. Little comments, almost throwaway remarks that made me pause, even if only for a second. He'd make passive comments, often disguised as compliments about my independent streak. Things like, it's sweet how you like to handle everything yourself, but you don't have to once we're married. Or, you're so capable. It's almost a challenge for a man to truly feel needed by you. At the time, I brushed them off, thinking he was just expressing affection, or maybe a slight insecurity about his role in our relationship. I thought it was sweet, even. And then there were the questions. So many questions. They wouldn't come all at once, but subtly, woven into casual conversations. So, your parents have a pretty big house, right? Is that family money or did they earn it all? Or has your grandmother always lived in that big house in central Austin? That must be worth a fortune. He'd always follow up with a disarming smile, making it seem like simple curiosity about my background, about the life I came from. I, naive and trusting, answered him openly, never suspecting an ulterior motive. I genuinely thought he was just interested in getting to know all of me, my family, my history. These were the embers, barely glowing in the shadows, that would eventually ignite the devastating firestorm. But back then, I saw nothing but the dazzling light of what I believed was true love. I was caught in a love bomb, floating on a cloud, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. I was so convinced of his sincerity, so enamored by his charm, that I completely missed the subtle but significant cracks appearing in his carefully constructed facade before Jason. If for the love bombing and the red flags, there was Grandma Loretta. She was more than just my grandmother. She was a force of nature, a fiercely private woman with a sharp mind and an even sharper sense of self-reliance. Growing up, she taught me everything about standing on my own 2 feet, about not relying on anyone else for my security or happiness. She was a widow, a clever investor in her own right, and she had built a quiet empire of her own, brick by careful brick. Her lessons weren't always direct. Sometimes they were simply in her quiet example, her unwavering composure. She was the moral heartbeat of my life, the steady anchor that kept me grounded. 3 months before what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, Grandma Loretta passed away. It was devastating. The grief was a heavy cloak, wrapping around me, making it hard to breathe, hard to see the future. In the midst of that profound sadness, her lawyer contacted me. Grandma Loretta, in her infinite wisdom and foresight, had bequeathed something truly extraordinary to me. Not just 1, but 3 rental apartments in central Austin. These weren't just properties. They were a legacy, a testament to her belief in me, and a continuation of her values. She had purchased them decades ago, renovating them herself, turning them into income-generating assets. And she made sure they were set up perfectly. The apartments were immediately placed into a family trust, with me as the sole beneficiary. This wasn't some casual gesture. It was a strategically planned, legally solid inheritance designed to protect me, to give me a foundation. And critically, it ensured that no future spouse, no matter how charming or persuasive, would ever have a legal claim to them. Grandma Loretta truly did think of everything. The weight of loss combined with the magnitude of this gift was almost overwhelming. I was still grappling with her absence, trying to process what this inheritance truly meant for my future. And in that raw, vulnerable state, a decision was made. A quiet, private decision. I chose to keep it silent. For now, anyway. My internal monologue at the time went something like this. Jason doesn't need to know everything. We're getting married for love, aren't we? This isn't about money. This is about us. I rationalized it to myself, convinced that revealing such a significant asset could complicate things, might somehow taint the purity of our impending union. I truly believed, in my innocent heart, that our love was enough, that finances were secondary. And honestly, part of me was still reeling from the grief, unable to fully process the implications of such a substantial inheritance. It wasn't a malicious secret, not then. It was a private one, born out of a mixture of profound grief, a desire to protect the perceived innocence of our connection, and perhaps an unconscious adherence to Grandma Loretta's lifelong mantra, "Don't show all your cards." I thought I was simply being cautious, prudent. I thought it was protecting us, protecting the idea of us. I had no idea then that this quiet act of withholding, this decision to keep my own valuable hand closed, would one day be the very thing that saved me from crumbling entirely. It was a secret, yes, but one that was already woven into the fabric of my independence, a thread that Grandma Loretta herself had meticulously placed there. Little did I know, it would one day become my strongest weapon that THU wedding day was perfect. A beautiful ceremony surrounded by friends and family, all celebrating what everyone believed was a true love story. I genuinely felt like the luckiest woman in the world, marrying the man of my dreams. I remember looking into Jason's eyes as we exchanged vows, believing wholeheartedly in his promises and our future. We danced, we celebrated, and I truly thought our happily ever after had just begun. But if the pre-wedding phase was a love bomb, the post-wedding reality was a slow-motion unraveling, a subtle but significant switch. It wasn't an immediate, jarring change, but a gradual tightening, a shift in atmosphere that made me increasingly uneasy. The man who had been so charming, so attentive, so eager to take care of me suddenly began to reveal a different side. The first thing I noticed was his tone. The passionate, playful teasing slowly morphed into something more controlling. It started with little things. He'd suggest how I should manage my time, what social events I should or shouldn't attend. Then, the financial discussions began, and they were far from the equitable partnership I had envisioned. He started wanting access to my bank accounts. Not to combine them, not for shared expenses, but access. As in, he wanted to see my balances, understand my spending. When I hesitated, he'd accuse me of not trusting him, of not being a real partner. He'd say things like, "We're married now, Danielle. Everything we have is ours. Why are you keeping secrets?" The irony of that statement, given what I knew but hadn't revealed, was not lost on me, even then. He also began to dismiss my job. My graphic design work, which I loved and had built independently, became a point of contention. "Do you really need to work those long hours, honey? You have a husband now. I can provide for us." It sounded sweet on the surface, but it quickly turned into thinly veiled criticism. My career was suddenly seen as a hobby, something trivial that took time away from my wifely duties. He'd make backhanded comments about my savings, too. "You've clearly been very frugal, Danielle. But hoarding money isn't living." It was an attempt to make me feel small, to diminish my financial independence. Then came the pressure. It started subtly, then became more insistent. He had these new business ventures, always shrouded in a bit of mystery, always requiring significant capital. He started pressuring me not just to invest together, but specifically to use family money to help get his projects off the ground. He dangled the carrot of massive returns, of building an even grander future for us. "Imagine what we could do with a little liquidity from your side, Danielle. We'd be unstoppable." My uneasiness grew day by day. This wasn't the man I married. This wasn't the partnership I signed up for. The fairy tale was cracking, revealing something much darker underneath. A knot of dread began to tighten in my stomach every time he brought up money or my lack of willingness to fully combine our finances. But despite the growing discomfort, I kept playing the role of the obedient wife. I tried to reason with him, to understand his perspective. I told myself that marriage was a big adjustment, that maybe he was just stressed with his businesses. I thought I could fix this. I'd whisper to myself late at night, staring at the ceiling next to his sleeping form. I thought this phase would pass, that the man I fell in love with would reappear. I convinced myself that if I just showed him enough support, enough trust, he would revert to the charming, loving Jason I knew. I was still so invested in the dream, so desperate for the reality to match the promise. I was walking on eggshells, trying desperately to keep the peace, unaware that the peace had already been shattered beyond repair. 6 months. 6 months into our marriage, and I was still trying to navigate the choppy waters of Jason's shifting personality, still trying to convince myself that the man I loved was simply under stress, that this controlling side was just a temporary blip. I walked on eggshells, carefully choosing my words, trying to anticipate his moods. I thought I was managing the situation, keeping the peace. Then came the brunch. A typical Sunday gathering at my aunt's house, filled with laughter, the clinking of dishes, and the usual family chatter. My cousin, Maya, a sweet, well-meaning, and incredibly bubbly person, was there. Maya and Grandma Loretta had always been close too, and Maya knew about the apartments, though she didn't know I hadn't told Jason. She believed, like my other close family members, that such a significant inheritance would, of course, be common knowledge between me and my husband. We were all sitting around the dining table, enjoying mimosas and quiche, when the conversation turned to Austin's ridiculous housing market. Someone mentioned property values, and Maya, without an ounce of malice or foresight, piped up, "Oh, Danielle, are you still planning on updating Grandma Loretta's apartments? I heard prices for renovations have really gone up." The room seemed to freeze. At least, it did for me. My blood ran cold and a jolt of pure dread shot through me. I saw Jason's body stiffen beside me. His fork, halfway to his mouth, stopped. The casual, relaxed expression on his face completely vanished, replaced by a mask of cold intensity. His eyes, usually so animated, became fixed like a predator spotting its prey. The air suddenly felt thick, suffocating. I knew in that instant that the secret was out. The little, well-intentioned leak had sprung, and there was no way to put the water back in the dam. I tried to play it off, to redirect the conversation, but it was too late. Jason didn't say a word at the brunch, not then. He just sat there, unnervingly still. But the silence, the sheer weight of his suppressed reaction, was deafening. The rest of the brunch felt like an eternity. I could feel his gaze on me, even when he pretended to engage with other family members. That night, all hell broke loose. As soon as we were back in our apartment, the front door barely closed behind us, Jason exploded. It wasn't just anger. It was a volcanic eruption of fury mixed with a profound sense of betrayal. He was pacing, his voice rising with every shouted word. "You lied to me? You kept this from me?" he roared, his face contorted. "We're supposed to be a team, Danielle." "A team? What kind of marriage is this? You manipulated me. You betrayed me. This is financial deception." He threw every accusation he could think of, his words piercing through the fragile peace we had been trying to maintain. He accused me of things I hadn't even considered possible, twisting the narrative until I was the villain, the master manipulator who had tricked him into marriage. I stood there, stunned by the ferocity of his outburst, but also surprisingly composed. A strange calm settled over me. This was it. The moment I had unconsciously prepared for. The true colors were finally, vividly, on display. My carefully constructed facade of obedience began to crack, revealing the steel Grandma Loretta had forged within me. When his tirade finally tapered off, leaving an echoing silence in the room, I looked at him. My voice was steady, clearer than I expected it to be. "They were never ours, Jason," I said, simply, directly. "They were always mine." My words hung in the air, a definitive statement. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a justification. It was a declaration of truth, a boundary drawn in the sand. He stared at me, probably expecting tears, remorse, and admission of guilt. But there was none. Just me, finally standing firm, realizing that this confrontation, however terrifying, was also a liberation. The game, as Grandma Loretta would say, was finally a end after that explosive night. Jason truly began to spiral. The charming facade he had so carefully maintained, the one that had fooled me and everyone around us, started to crumble at an alarming rate. With the secret of the apartments now out in the open, even if not fully revealed, he seemed to lose all pretense of being a loving, supportive husband. The pressure intensified, the accusations became relentless. He was like a cornered animal, lashing out, and I quickly realized that his anger stemmed from a place of deep desperation. It was during this chaotic period that I started to notice things. Small discrepancy, yes at first, then larger, more concerning patterns. Little slips of paper, bills that didn't quite add up, uncomfortable phone calls he'd quickly hang up when I entered the room. My gut, which I had ignored for far too long, was screaming at me. I started paying closer attention, digging a little deeper. And what I found was a chilling tapestry of deceit. Jason's self-made entrepreneur persona was a house of cards. I uncovered hidden debts, staggering amounts of money owed to various sources, far beyond what any reasonable business venture would accrue. His shady business deals weren't just shady. They bordered on illegal, leaving a trail of broken promises and defrauded investors. It wasn't just a matter of poor financial management. It was a carefully constructed mirage. And then there were the late-night texts. His phone was always glued to his hand, always face down, always locked. One night, he fell asleep unexpectedly, and his phone buzzed with an incoming message. Curiosity, or perhaps a desperate need for confirmation, compelled me to look. The message was from a contact saved only as investor partner, but the content was anything but professional. It was intimate, affectionate, discussing plans that clearly went beyond business. I scrolled up, my heart sinking with each revelation. There were photos, messages about secret meetings, and expressions of a romantic relationship. This investor partner wasn't just a colleague. She was a woman named Claire, and she was clearly much more than that. She was his girlfriend. I confronted him, of course. My voice was shaky, but the evidence was undeniable. His denials were weak, his excuses transparent. In that moment, watching him squirm, I finally truly understood. It wasn't just about the apartments. It was never just about those properties. It was about accessing a life, a financial stability, a perceived status that he could never build on his own merits. He hadn't married Danielle for love. He had married Danielle for what he believed Danielle could provide, for what he thought he could extract from my life, from my family. The man I thought I knew, the charming prince from our love story, was a complete stranger. A con artist. A fake. The realization was a punch to the gut, but also, strangely, a catalyst. The fog of naive hope lifted, replaced by a cold, clear resolve. This wasn't a marriage to save. It was a threat to neutralize. My grandmother's voice echoed in my head. Don't show all your cards if you're not sure of the poker table. Well, I was finally sure of the table, and it was rigged that very day. I secretly contacted an attorney. It was a firm yet gentle woman, Attorney Reynolds, whom a close friend highly recommended. She listened patiently as I laid out the entire messy truth. From the love bomb to the recent discoveries, her advice was calm, calculated. Document everything, every argument, every suspicious financial statement, every text message, every late GHT absence. I began meticulously cataloging Jason's double life, building a case brick by painstaking brick. I became a silent observer, gathering evidence, transforming my despair into strategic action. The game had changed, and this time I was playing to WN with Attorney Reynolds' guidance and Grandma Loretta's voice echoing in my mind, a constant reminder to trust my instincts and protect myself. I began to meticulously, quietly, and strategically separate myself from Jason. It wasn't a sudden break, but a methodical dismantling of our intertwined lives, financially, emotionally, and physically. I was no longer the obedient wife, but a carefully calculating strategist. The financial separation began first. With my attorney's discreet advice, I started redirecting my income, ensuring my personal accounts were inaccessible to him. Any joint accounts were carefully monitored, and I took steps to protect my credit and assets that weren't part of the trust. It was like untangling a complex knot, thread by painstaking thread, without him even realizing I was doing it. Every piece of evidence I'd gathered of the hidden debts, the suspicious transactions, the text to Claire was filed away, ready to be presented. Emotionally, the distance grew into an unbridgeable chasm. The love I once felt for Jason had curdled into a mix of disappointment and a cold, clinical understanding of his true character. Conversations became superficial, necessary only to maintain the guise of a struggling marriage rather than a dissolving one. I stopped trying to fix him, stopped hoping he would revert to the man I thought I knew. He was a stranger, and I was simply an actor in a play, waiting for my cue to exit the stage. The physical separation was the final step in my immediate exit plan. I needed space, a sanctuary where I could breathe and truly prepare for the next chapter. And I knew exactly where to find it. I proposed to Jason that I move into one of Grandma Loretta's apartments for a while. I framed it as needing space to think, to process the recent turmoil, to see if we could somehow salvage our marriage. I even let slip a few tears, playing the distraught wife. It was a performance, but a convincing one. Jason, blinded by his own desperation and self-interest, fell for it completely. He likely saw it as an opportunity, a temporary retreat that would eventually lead to me caving to his demands. He probably thought it would make me more isolated, more vulnerable, and thus easier to manipulate into signing over a property to help him with his mounting debts. He was so focused on his own financial crisis that he couldn't see the trap I was setting. He was still trying to figure out how to leverage my assets for his gain. My moving out perfectly coincided with his own escalating problems. Faced with burgeoning debts and the increasing demands of his investor partner, Claire, Jason became more desperate. He moved in with Claire shortly after I left. Oh, Penley now flaunting his relationship. He clearly believed that by moving on so quickly, he was demonstrating his independence, his lack of reliance on me. What he failed to realize was that this act, too, would become another nail in his coffin, another piece of evidence from my attorney. He was digging his own grave, and I was simply providing him with the shovel. As I settled into one of the quiet, familiar apartments, the walls that Grandma Loretta had literally built seemed to whisper encouragement. Her presence felt stronger than ever. The apartment felt like a fortress, a place where I could finally shed the weight of pretending, where I could breathe freely and steel myself for the battle ahead. I wasn't running away. I was strategically repositioning myself. The exit plan was in full motion, and the true battle was about to begin. Every step was calculated, every move deliberate. The game was no longer about love or saving a marriage. It was about survival, justice, and claiming back my own life. Teachy weeks following my move to the apartment were a period of calm before the storm, a strategic quietude during which I finalized every detail with Attorney Reynolds. We had meticulously compiled all the evidence. Every hidden debt, every shady business dealing, every late-night text to Claire. The web of deceit Jason had spun was intricately documented, leaving no room for doubt or reinterpretation. I felt like a general, observing the battlefield before giving the order to attack. And then the papers dropped. Not just any papers, but a legal bombshell delivered to Jason at his new residence with Claire. The divorce papers. They weren't merely a request for dissolution of marriage. They were a meticulously constructed edifice of legal leverage. Attached were irrefutable, undeniable proofs of his asset concealment, his attempts at financial exploitation, the documented emotional abuse, and the damning evidence of his infidelity. To seal it, there was a swiftly obtained restraining order, citing harassment and a pattern of coercive control, ensuring he couldn't come near me or my properties while the proceedings unfolded. The reaction was immediate and exactly what Attorney Reynolds had predicted. Jason, now exposed and cornered, went from bluster to begging. His calls and messages, now routed through proper legal channels, were desperate, chaotic. He pleaded for negotiations, for a chance to talk things through, to work it out like adults. He suggested mediation, asked for an opportunity to explain everything. Suddenly, the big, confident entrepreneur was reduced to a whimpering mess, realizing that his carefully constructed world was collapsing around him. But I wasn't the naive, love-struck girl he had married anymore. The woman who answered those calls through my attorney was firm, unyielding. There was no room for negotiation, no desire for reconciliation, no interest in any of his offers. The time for talking had passed. I had given him every opportunity to be honest, to be the partner he claimed to be. He had chosen deception. Attorney Reynolds advised against direct contact, but there was one particular moment when a message came through, a desperate, rambling voicemail that somehow slipped past the filters. In it, Jason tried to pull on my heartstrings, reminding me of our love, of the future we had planned. He actually used the words, "But Danielle, we married for love." And that was my moment. Guided by a profound sense of self-worth and a steeliness I didn't know I possessed, I dictated my response to Attorney Reynolds. Her composed voice delivered the message, a cutting, precise finality that perfectly encapsulated everything I felt. "You married me for love, Jason?" I had her relay. "That's what you thought. But here's the truth I finally understand. I married you hoping you'd never find out who I really am. I hoped you'd never discover the strength, the resilience, the independent spirit Grandma Loretta instilled in me. I hoped you'd never find out about the resources I truly had, because I truly believed our love transcended such things. But you forced my hand. Now you have. You've uncovered exactly who I really am, and you've found out exactly what I possess. And because of that," I concluded, my voice resolute, "goodbye." It was the ultimate mic drop, the end of the performance. The final curtain call on a chapter that had almost consumed me. There was no anger, no shouting, just a quiet, powerful dismissal. The man who had sought to control and exploit me was now utterly powerless. The paper avalanche had buried him, and I was free. Free to rebuild, to grow, to finally step into the full power of a woman who knew her worth. A worth he had completely underestimated. Teachy divorce was finalized with surprising speed, thanks to the undeniable evidence Attorney Reynolds had meticulously compiled. Jason, utterly exposed and facing public disgrace and potential legal ramifications for his fraudulent dealings, had no choice but to concede. He lost everything, not just the marriage, but his reputation, his false image of success, and any shred of dignity he might have convinced himself he still possessed. He ended up bankrupt, publicly disgraced, and as far as I know, completely alone, as Claire quickly distanced herself from his downward spiral. His loss, however, became my liberation. With the legal battle behind me, I finally had the emotional and financial freedom to fully embrace Grandma Loretta's legacy. This wasn't about vindictiveness. It was about reclaiming my life and transforming a painful experience into something profoundly positive. My revenge, as I saw it, wouldn't be in tearing Jason down further, but in building myself and others up. The apartments became my canvas, my mission. I was in my element, combining my graphic design skills with a deep personal purpose. I decided to renovate them, not just as rental properties, but as spaces that reflected my values and honored Grandma Loretta's spirit. One apartment, the one I had temporarily sought refuge in, became my permanent sanctuary. I poured my heart into it, designing every corner to be a reflection of peace, creativity, and resilience. It's a place where I feel completely safe, completely myself, surrounded by beauty and the quiet strength of my grandmother's memory. It's where I truly live now. Another apartment, nestled in the vibrant heart of Austin, I transformed into a boutique Airbnb. It's a stylish, comfortable space for travelers, a little slice of the city for people to enjoy. The income from this, combined with my graphic design work, allowed me to live comfortably and, more importantly, securely. It proved that I didn't need Jason's provision or his entrepreneurial ventures to thrive. I could provide for myself beautifully and ethically. But the third apartment, that's where the real heart of my mission lies. I envisioned it as a place of refuge, a stepping stone for others. I renovated it with the intention of offering it as a rent-subsidized home specifically for women leaving abusive relationships. It's designed to be a safe, clean, and empowering space where they can rebuild their lives away from the shadows of control and fear. It's a space where they can find their own independence, just as I found mine. It's my way of paying forward the strength and security Grandma Loretta gave me. I started documenting this journey online. Not the sensational details of the divorce, but the transformation of the apartments, the process of healing, and the stories of finding purpose after pain. I shared snippets of the renovation, the design choices, and eventually, the profound impact of providing a safe haven for other women. Unexpectedly, my story resonated. It connected with so many people who had faced their own battles, their own betrayals. The comments, the messages, the outpouring of support was overwhelming. I became a viral inspiration, not for my revenge, but for my resilience, for turning pain into powerful action. Jason's fate, in contrast, was a stark reminder of the consequences of his choices. Friends and acquaintances in Austin, who had once admired his flashy lifestyle, now openly discussed his downfall. His self-made empire was revealed to be a house of cards built on borrowed money and false promises. He tried to start over, but his reputation preceded him. The whispers followed him everywhere. He tried to get back into old circles, but the doors were closed. He was a cautionary tale, stripped of his charm and his supposed influence. He lost everything that truly mattered, things I had lost temporarily and was now rebuilding and appreciating anew. And I, through the very properties he coveted, flourished. It's been a year now since the dust settled, since the legal papers were signed, and since I truly began to live again. A whole year. So much has changed, and yet, in a fundamental I feel like I've finally come home to myself. I'm standing here now, on the flowered balcony of one of Grandma Loretta's apartments, my apartment, my sanctuary. The Austin sun is warm on my face, the scent of jasmine fills the air, and there's a lightness in my chest that I haven't felt in a very long time. My voice, as you can probably hear, is stronger, clearer, imbued with a confidence that wasn't there when I first started this video. My smile, the one you see now, is genuine, reaching my eyes in a way it never truly did during my marriage to Jason. I look out at the cityscape, at the familiar neighborhood where Grandma Loretta cultivated her quiet independence, and I'm filled with a profound sense of peace. That's what I ultimately wanted, wasn't it? I never wanted riches, at least not in the conventional sense. I certainly didn't marry Jason for money. All I ever truly craved was peace. A quiet, steady peace of mind, knowing I was safe, valued, and in control of my own life. And yet, Paradoxically, by seeking that peace, by standing up for myself and reclaiming what was rightfully mine, I found myself rich in every way. The financial security provided by these apartments is undeniable, a solid foundation beneath my feet. But the true wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's in the quiet hum of the renovated spaces, each one a testament to resilience and renewal. It's in the vibrant community I've connected with through sharing my journey online, particularly the women who have found strength in my story. It's in the knowledge that one of these apartments is now a beacon of hope for women who are desperately seeking their own escape, their own beginning. That, more than anything, fills me with pride and purpose. The journey was anything but easy. I had to walk through fire, through betrayal, through a kind of emotional hell I never imagined I'd experience. But if I had to go through all of that, if I had to endure that profound pain and disillusionment to finally understand my own worth, to recognize my own strength, and to appreciate the profound wisdom of my grandmother's quiet lessons, then truly, thank God. Thank God for what I didn't give away for free. Thank God for the secret I kept close, for the cards I held back, because they ultimately saved me. They allowed me to rebuild, not just a life, but a stronger, truer version of myself. If you've ever had to draw a line in the sand, if you've ever had to set your boundaries with someone you loved, especially when it felt impossible, when it felt like you were risking everything, I want you to comment "strong like Loretta" below. Because her wisdom, her quiet power, truly guided me. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. And always remember this: the best revenge isn't about making someone else suffer. The best revenge is knowing your worth and owning every single bit of it.